When it comes to the peculiar land of World Wrestling Entertainment, there are certain lies which need to be told in order to create the unique product we've grown to love/endure over the years. Yet a star being kept down for the count after taking an elbow drop which wouldn't worry your grandmother is one thing. Selling your passionate, loyal fans a blatant fib just to cover up your own mistakes or squeeze more money out of their wallets is another entirely. I'm Gareth from What Culture Wrestling, and here are 10 times WWE blatantly lied to our faces. Number 10, first ever last woman standing match, not counting NXT. Coming into WWE's first ever all-women's pay-per-view, Evolution, in 2018, the company sensed they needed to put together a few special encounters to sell the landmark event. So it was soon announced that Becky Lynch would put her SmackDown Women's Championship on the line against Charlotte Flair in the first ever last woman standing match. Of course, fans were absolutely buzzing about this impending war between two of WWE's baddest women, but many were quick to point out that this wasn't actually going to be the first match of its type in WWE history. A year earlier, Nikki Cross attempted to prize the NXT Women's Championship away from Asuka on an episode of NXT, in what was billed as the show's first ever last woman standing match. But despite the black and gold brand being under the WWE umbrella, fans were asked to forget that the Asuka and Cross Full Sail epic ever took place, in order to add some more luster to an already impressive looking night of action. We remember though, ladies, we remember. Number 9, twice in a lifetime. Though the prospect of the two faces of their generations facing off in a one-on-one contest for the very first time was blatantly enough to convince folks to spend their money on WrestleMania 28, WWE decided to add a bit of extra spice to The Rock and John Cena's Show of Shows epic. Picking up the Clash of the Titans as a once-in-a-lifetime spectacle, the company couldn't go a promo or hype package without reminding us that we had to see this one-and-done main event for the ages. Only they never actually intended on calling it quits after round 1. From the minute the Great One agreed to return to WWE as WrestleMania 27's special guest host, Vince McMahon had his eye on a pair of larger-than-life contests between two of his greatest ever creations. So once Rocky had picked up the W in Miami, the seeds were planted for a rematch against the face that runs the place at the following year's event. And just like that, WWE shamelessly went back on their tagline from just 12 months earlier, delivering us a match so nice they booked it twice. Number 8, You Are the Authority. A couple of years ago, WWE's main roster programming found itself in both a creative and ratings slump. So Vince, Stephanie, and Shane McMahon, along with Triple H, all wandered down to the ring on the December 18, 2018 episode of Monday Night Raw and announced the beginning of a bold new era. The four of them admitted they hadn't been listening to their audience and stressed that they would now begin empowering their superstars and fans and give us what we wanted: new faces and new matchups, because we were now the authority. Fast forward 2 years and WWE have consistently posted record low viewing numbers for Monday Night Raw. Fresh matches have popped up once in a blue moon, and the company have recently empowered their performers by banning them from third-party platforms. In reality, this appearance from the McMahons and subsequent brief revitalizing of the product was designed as a way to just shut up moaning fans for a little bit. Who needs fresh faces when you can just book another Legends Night instead? Said nobody in the 18 to 49 demographic ever. Number 7, stars from Raw and SmackDown face off against each other for one night only. On the surface, making Survivor Series the one night a year where stars from the red and blue and sometimes black and gold brands collide isn't the worst idea in the world. However, there's one glaring problem with the concept in its current state. It simply isn't true. Since the brand split once again in 2016, we've seen a wildcard rule brought into play that allowed a collection of stars to appear on their supposed rival show whenever they pleased. Wrestlers from opposing brands go head-to-head on both shows during draft seasons right before Survivor Series, and reliable workers from another WWE program show up to save the day when their opposing brand's star is pulled from a contest. But calling Survivor Series yet another night where stars from Raw and SmackDown collide simply doesn't sound as good. So expect to be fed this lie as long as the brand's rosters remain divided. Number 6, frequent false advertising. To kick off the new year and desperately attempt to pop a rating, WWE decided to promote an incoming Legends Night for the January 4th episode of Monday Night Raw. As revealed in various trailers in the build-up to the special show, the likes of Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, Big Show, Tori Wilson, and many more would be returning to the red brand for reasons. However, a number of the names presented in the vignette, such as Candice Michelle and most notably Carlito, didn't actually show up on the night. So if you tuned in to see those particular stars, it sucks to be you. Throughout the history of the company, WWE have pulled this trick time and time again due to their cards always being subject to change. So the moral of this story is to depressingly always take a piece of WWE advertising with a pinch of salt. Number 5. Advertising Stone Cold Steve Austin for Survivor Series 1999. On the subject of false advertising, lying about a top star or name from the past returning to WWE programming is one thing. Convincing fans to buy a pay-per-view with the promise of seeing the biggest talent in the business perform when you know full well that he isn't in any physical condition to do so is something else. Yet that still didn't stop WWE promoting a triple threat at Survivor Series 1999 involving WWE Champion Triple H, The Rock, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. Vince McMahon and co were well aware that Austin was set to be forced out of action for some time due to needing surgery to combat his recurring neck issues. But announcing this ahead of time would have no doubt had a negative impact on pay-per-view buys for the event. So WWE instead opted to swerve their fans by having Austin run over on the night, inserting The Big Show as his late replacement. Show would surprisingly win the big one, and the car attack would kickstart an intriguing, if eventually underwhelming, whodunit storyline. However, that still doesn't change the fact that WWE blatantly lied to their audience just to keep their pockets lined. Number 4. Vince McMahon is forced off TV for about 2 months. In July of 1999, the iconic Mr. McMahon vs. Stone Cold Steve Austin feud looked to be entering its final stages. Billed as the end of an era, Austin would defend his WWE Championship against The Undertaker in a first blood match at Fully Loaded. If the Rattlesnake was defeated, he would never be able to challenge for the belt again. If the Dead Man failed to capture the gold, McMahon would be forced off WWE television forever. In the end, Austin walked out of the arena the victor, leaving the boss with no choice but to pack up his things and hit the road. For about 2 months, with Triple H putting his hands on the boss's wife, McMahon shockingly strutted down to the ring, proclaiming that even though he swore to stay out of WWE business, "This is not business, this is personal." The WWE chairman would then ultimately defeat the game for his WWE title on an episode of SmackDown, and soon find himself reinstated by Austin after he agreed to give his arch-enemy a shot at the belt he just vacated. You keeping up? Ultimately, this just stank of the company trying to wriggle themselves out of the corner they had stupidly booked themselves into. Sound familiar? Number 3. The greatest wrestling match ever. The word greatest gets thrown around an awful lot in the land of professional wrestling. However, when it comes to the greatest wrestling match ever argument, WWE decided to make the decision process a whole lot easier for us bickering fans by giving us the undisputed champ at Backlash 2020, whether we agreed or not, hammering home the fact that we were about to see the greatest wrestling match ever in vignettes, social media posts, and just about every single episode of Raw and SmackDown during the lead up to the event. Even the most passionate Edge and Randy Orton supporters had a feeling WWE was setting themselves up for a mighty fall here. Though the bout itself was by no means a terrible affair, this performance center punch-up paled in comparison to the other matches fans think of when that tagline is thrown into a conversation. In truth, WWE absolutely knew this would be the case going in, but they had a pay-per-view to sell and did not care about the validity of their audacious claim. Number 2. A new attendance record. Anyone who has ever sat through the increasingly colossal WrestleMania events WWE brings to life each and every year will know that the company don't half love to brag about how many fans they've managed to cram into whichever stadium is housing that year's event. Yet just because the company slap it on a fancy graphic and play some rousing music doesn't necessarily mean they're telling the truth about the numbers revealed on the night. From WWE claiming that WrestleMania 3 saw 93,173 fans in attendance, when the real number was apparently much closer to 78,000, to WrestleMania 32's record-breaking 101,763 being inflated from the 79,800 number WrestleNomics Brandon Thurston reported later down the line, Vince McMahon isn't afraid to pump up his figures in order to make his must-see spectacle look, well, must-see. Number 1. Bret screwed Bret. In October 1997, Vince McMahon told Bret Hart that he was intentionally breaking the terms of the 20-year deal he'd signed the prior year, advising him to phone up WCW to see if they could offer him a contract. This then led to the Hitman eventually agreeing to part ways with WWE. Despite being happy to drop the belt before leaving, Hart also had something known as reasonable creative control in his current WWE deal. And this is precisely why he was so adamant on not losing the title to his bitter enemy on and off screen, Shawn Michaels, in Canada. Sure enough, McMahon opted to book a match at Survivor Series in Montreal between Hart and HBK for the title. In the end though, the trio agreed to a disqualification finish at the event, with Hart dropping the title later down the line. But a paranoid McMahon soon decided against that finish and planned the now infamous chain of events before executing the screwjob on the excellence of execution. Those watching on TV were left a bit confused as to what the hell had just happened due to the feed being cut shortly after the match had ended. McMahon then lied through his teeth on the following week's episode of Raw, uttering a phrase which would be hurled back at him for years to come. And that's our list. Know of any other times WWE blatantly lied to our faces? Let us know all about them in the comment section below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button. Also, be sure to head on over to whatculture.com and click on some more incredible articles just like the one this video is based on. I've been Gareth from What Culture Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm sure I'll see you very, very soon.